We put a fleet Camry on regular 87 octane and its twin on premium 93 for 12 straight months. Same driver, same routes, same oil changes. And when I finally sat down with both maintenance logs side by side, the fuel economy gap was small enough to laugh at, but the story underneath it wasn't. Because what we actually learned wasn't about miles per gallon. It was about what premium gas does and doesn't do inside a Toyota engine, and why so many owners are pouring extra money into their tank every single week for absolutely nothing. Let me back up and tell you how this started. A customer of mine, a guy who ran a small landscaping business, came into the shop convinced his 2019 Camry was running rough on regular gas. He'd been putting premium in it for 2 years because a buddy told him it was better for the engine. I asked him why he thought that, and he said the same thing I hear from half the people who walk through my door. Premium burns cleaner, premium protects the engine, premium is what you use if you actually care about your car. None of that is technically true for a vehicle that wasn't built to need it, and that's exactly the myth this whole test was designed to break. So here's what we did. My shop partner and I picked 2 nearly identical Camrys, both with the 2.5-liter 4-cylinder, both around 40,000 miles at the start, both driven by employees with similar commutes, roughly 60% highway and 40% city. One got 87 octane regular for the entire year. The other got 93 octane premium, filled at the same stations, tracked with the same fuel logging app. We changed the oil at the same intervals, rotated tires on the same schedule, and pulled data every single fill-up. First thing to understand, and this is the part almost nobody explains correctly, octane rating has nothing to do with how pure or clean the fuel is. It's strictly a measurement of how resistant the fuel is to detonating too early under compression. Toyota's 4-cylinder and V6 engines, the ones in the Camry, Corolla, RAV4, Highlander, and Tacoma, are tuned by the factory to run on 87 octane. The compression ratio, the ignition timing maps, all of it is calibrated around regular fuel from day one. Feeding that engine premium doesn't give it something it's missing. It gives it fuel that resists detonation more than the engine is asking for. And an engine that isn't asking for it can't use the extra resistance for anything. Now here's where the knock sensor comes into the conversation, because this is the actual mechanism people misunderstand. Every modern Toyota has a knock sensor bolted to the engine block, and its entire job is to listen for pre-ignition, that metallic pinging sound you get when fuel detonates before the spark plug fires it. If the ECU, the engine control unit, detects knock, it retards ignition timing to protect the pistons and cylinder walls. This system exists specifically so an engine tuned for premium can survive on regular gas without damage, just with a small performance penalty. But if your engine is already tuned for 87 and you feed it 93, the knock sensor has nothing to correct. There's no knock happening either way, so the ECU doesn't adjust anything, and the premium advantage people expect simply never activates. That's exactly what we saw in the data. Over the full year, the premium Camry averaged 34.1 miles per gallon combined. The regular Camry averaged 33.8. That's a difference of about 0.9%, well within the range of normal variance you'd get from 2 different drivers on 2 different days with 2 different tire pressures. It is not a real efficiency gain. It's noise. Where the numbers got interesting was the wallet, not the engine. Premium at the stations we used ran anywhere from 60 cents to 90 cents more per gallon than regular across the year. With both Camrys burning roughly 450 gallons annually, that put the premium car somewhere between $270 and $400 more expensive to fuel, for a fuel economy difference that didn't even round up to a full mile per gallon. That's the real headline of this whole test. You are not buying performance. You're buying a more expensive version of the exact same combustion event. If you're finding this useful, go ahead and hit that thumbs up and subscribe, because I've got a lot more real-world Toyota testing coming, and I don't want you to miss it. Now, I want to be fair here, because this isn't a blanket rule for every single Toyota on the road. There are exceptions, and knowing them matters. The GR Supra, with its turbocharged inline-six, is tuned specifically around premium fuel, and Toyota recommends 91 octane minimum for that car to hit its rated horsepower and protect the turbo under boost. The GR Corolla is similar, a genuinely high-compression turbocharged platform where premium isn't a suggestion. It's part of how the factory calibration was built. Certain Tundra trims with the twin-turbo V6, especially when you're towing near the vehicle's rated capacity, will also see Toyota recommend premium for sustained high-load situations, because sustained boost under heavy load is exactly the scenario where knock resistance actually starts to matter. If you own one of those three, this test doesn't apply to you, and you should be running what the fuel door sticker tells you to run. But if you're driving a Camry, a Corolla, a RAV4, a Highlander, a Tacoma, or a Prius, none of those platforms are built around premium, and none of them are turbocharged in a way that changes that math. We actually pulled the naturally aspirated four-cylinder out of this conversation entirely and looked specifically at whether premium changed throttle response or acceleration feel, since that's the other claim people make, that premium feels faster off the line. Neither driver in our test could reliably tell which car they were in during a blind week where we didn't tell them which tank had which fuel. One guessed based on sound, not performance, and he guessed wrong. We also looked at long-term engine health markers, because that landscaping customer I mentioned earlier wasn't entirely wrong to care about protecting his engine. He was just solving the wrong problem. Over the year, we sent oil samples from both Camrys out for analysis at the same mileage intervals, checking for wear metals like iron, aluminum, and copper, the same markers a lab uses to catch bearing wear or piston ring wear before it becomes visible on a dipstick. The results were essentially identical between the two cars. No measurable difference in wear metal concentration that could be attributed to fuel grade. What did show up as a factor, in both cars equally, was trip length. Short trips under 10 minutes, where the engine never fully reaches operating temperature, produced higher fuel dilution readings in the oil regardless of which gas was in the tank. That's a real thing that affects Toyota engine longevity. Octane rating was not. I also want to walk you through what actually happens if you flip the situation. If you're driving one of those premium required models like the Supra or GR Corolla, and you put regular gas in it instead, because that's the mistake with real consequences, unlike the one we just tested. In that scenario, the knock sensor is doing real work. It detects detonation from the lower octane fuel and retards ignition timing to prevent piston and cylinder wall damage. In the short term, you'll feel it as a noticeable loss of power, sluggish throttle response, maybe worse fuel economy since the ECU is compensating instead of running its optimal timing map. Do it occasionally, on a long road trip where premium isn't available at a rural station, and you're fine. The system is built to handle that. Do it consistently over months, and you're asking the knock sensor to work overtime in a high-compression engine, which is a very different situation from what we tested in these two Camrys. There's one more piece of this that surprised me, and it came from checking the injectors and intake valves at the end of the 12 months. A lot of the premium marketing centers around detergent additives, the idea that premium gas keeps your engine cleaner than regular. Here's the truth of that claim. Detergent additive levels aren't determined by octane rating. They're determined by whether the fuel meets top-tier gasoline standards, a certification that Toyota and several other automakers actually require in their owner's manuals, regardless of octane. Both the regular and premium fuel we used in this test came from top-tier certified stations, meaning both tanks were getting the same additive protection the whole time. We pulled the throttle body and visually inspected the intake valves on both Camrys at the 12-month mark, and carbon buildup was comparable on both. Nothing that suggested one fuel was keeping the engine measurably cleaner than the other. If you want a cleaner running engine, the fuel grade isn't the lever. The top-tier label on the pump is the lever, and that's true whether you're paying 87 octane prices or 93 octane prices for it. So here's where I landed after a full year of logging this, and after doing this job long enough to see the same conversation happen in my shop over and over. For the overwhelming majority of Toyota owners, premium gas is not protecting your engine, it is not meaningfully improving your fuel economy, and it is not giving you performance you can actually feel behind the wheel. It's giving your engine fuel with more knock resistance than it was ever designed to need, and your ECU simply isn't built to reward that extra resistance with anything. The only people who should be reaching for the premium pump are Supra owners, GR Corolla owners, and Tundra owners doing serious towing, because those are the only Toyota platforms where the factory tuning was actually built around it. For everyone else, and that's most of you watching this, that extra 60 to 90 cents a gallon is money that would do more for your car sitting in an envelope labeled "Next Oil Change" than it ever will sitting in your fuel tank. Run the octane on your fuel door sticker, keep your maintenance on schedule, and trust that Toyota's engineers already calibrated this engine around the cheaper fuel for a reason. If you're enjoying this kind of real-world testing, stick around, because next I'm breaking down what actually happens when you run the wrong oil viscosity in a Toyota for a full year, and that one hit our engines a lot harder than the gas ever did.